please rise. Before we do the pledge, I would just like to have a moment of silence for Joseph Zeller, passed away this past week, 100 years old. Served in World War II for 3 years, and during the Korean War, he was a councilman here in Emmaus. He was the mayor of Emmaus. He served in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives for 134th District. I believe he was the last Democrat that served in that position. He was heavily involved in the Veterans Affairs. He was a 70-year member of the American Legion and VFW. He defeated the State Civil Liberties Union from removing a taxpayer-funded nativity scene from the Emmaus Triangle, our current nativity scene. And he was also the founder of the Emmaus Flag Day Association. So at this time, I'd like to have a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we have a public hearing first. Kind of went out of order there, huh?
No, you're okay.
All right. So our public hearing is on Ordinance 1183, which is an ordinance amending the Borough of Emmaus zoning ordinance of 1993 as amended to apply the modified parking requirements of Section 27-602, subsection 6, to craft beverage restaurants and craft beverage production facilities located in a central commercial district zoning district. So at this time, I will turn it over to the solicitor for comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. What we have tonight, as Brett noted, is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and the ordinance is number 1183, and it was advertised in accordance with the municipality's planning code. It was delivered to the Lehigh County Law Library for review. The advertisement was submitted in the newspaper November 28, 2018 and December 5, 2018, which complies with the requirements of the MPC. There was a public notice which contained a summary of the ordinance, and in addition, the matter was reviewed by Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, who considered it to be a matter of local concern, and also by the Borough of Emmaus Planning Commission, which recommended approval of that ordinance. Very briefly, what the ordinance does is it applies the parking exemption which currently exists in the BC district to craft beverage restaurants and craft beverage production facilities which have had difficulty establishing themselves in the downtown district or in the BC district because of parking requirements. And when the ordinance was originally prepared, it applied the parking requirements for a restaurant and the parking requirements for a tavern or a nightclub to these types of facilities. And a restaurant would have required one off-street parking space for 4 seats plus 1 space for every 2 employees. And a tavern would have required 1 per 40 feet of total square foot of floor area. So what this ordinance does is it eliminates those requirements, which is an exemption that already applies to other businesses in the BC district. So in effect, this type of use actually had requirements placed on it that other businesses didn't have in that district. There are some exceptions to that rule, but the exceptions to the rule of no parking requirements would not apply to craft beverages that are being presently established. The exceptions to the rule would be new construction of more than 4,000 square foot of building floor area, and if you have dwelling units, boarding houses, if you add new units, then you'd have to provide for parking. But that's what this ordinance does, and what we do tonight with a public hearing, it's an opportunity for council to ask questions for borough citizens and other interested individuals to get up and speak concerning this ordinance. And then after all of that is done, we close the hearing, and when we move into the regular meeting, council then has the opportunity to vote on the ordinance, and then it's subject to approval by the mayor, if the mayor so chooses to approve. Mr. President, I can open it up to public comment if there is any.
Sure, but just for the record, all
Sure.
6 council members are here, and Madam Mayor is also present
Okay.
for the attendance record.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to get up and comment concerning this ordinance? Okay, there's a negative response, Mr. President, therefore turn it back over to
Sure.
council.
Any comments from council? This is something that we're doing so that we can, well, we're not limiting the craft beverage industry just to certain areas that have parking, so.
Well,
this-
yeah, and it also makes it consistent with other businesses in the downtown district that have an alcohol license.
Right. So, all right. With that,
So-
we can adjourn?
We can close the record on this and deal with it in the regular meeting.
Do we need a motion to adjourn or just adjourn?
We're just closing a hearing.
All right,
We don't
so
need
at
a
this
motion.
time, we'll adjourn the special hearing at 7:07. And with that, we'll go to our regular meeting agenda. Starting with personal appeals, does anyone have a personal appeal? Hearing none, community minute, does anyone have anything to bring forward or a report on? No. Special presentations, we have none. Reading of the minutes, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the council meeting minutes of December 3rd, 2018? Councilman Anders, seconded by Councilwoman Baumgardner. Questions or corrections on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes. We have no decisions on bids. Communications, we received a letter from Carrie Schreppel from the Arts Commission requesting the Snow Blast Winter Arts Festival on February 2nd. We'll have staff take care of that. We received a letter from Hanover Engineering requesting reappointment to the of Borough Engineering and Sewage Enforcement Officers for 2019. We'll refer that to General Administration. And Keith Plunkett has an event request for a money knife fight against cancer bike ride to be held April 6th, 2019. We'll also let staff handle that. I believe that's an event we had in the past.
Just once, I would say let's take it to Parks and Rec because there is some wording on their request, their event form that I think we need some clarification on.
Yeah, there was another option for,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mention what it is.
Right, so. I
Okay,
think
so we'll refer that to Parks and Rec
Parks
then.
and Rec.
All right, and then tonight on our desk, I believe everyone got it, at least I did. We received a letter, Dear Sirs and Madam, please accept this letter of notification to the Borough of Emmaus Police Department that I will be resigning as a police officer effective as of December 12th, 2018. I wish to express my appreciation for the opportunity to work for the Emmaus Police Department for 28 years in a capacity as a dispatcher and a police officer. It has been a pleasure to serve the citizens of Emmaus. Sincerely, William Breyfogle Jr. So we wish him the best of luck, and we'll send him a thank you for 28 years of service. That's a lot of dedication there, and be hard to replace, I guess, huh? So, Borough Engineers Report, we have none. Solicitors Report.
Yeah, just very briefly, we continue to await a decision from Judge Reichley on the Mascaro case. And that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfinished Business Part 1, we have 2 ordinances for second reading. First one being Ordinance 1183, which we had a hearing for tonight. An ordinance amending the Borough of Emmaus zoning ordinance of 1993 as amended to apply to the modified parking requirements of Section 27-602, subsection 6, to craft beverage restaurants and craft beverage production facilities located in a central commercial zoning district. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 1183? Councilwoman McManaman, and seconded by Councilman Schubsta. Questions or discussion? Councilwoman Baumgartner?
I just wanted to point out that in the attachment, there's page 2 is missing on this attachment. It was in our original first reading. There were 3 pages. Just to make sure we know which version we're voting on.
Yeah,
We did have it on the first reading.
Yeah.
yeah, there is a page missing.
We can go back to the previous meeting,
Mm-hmm.
which was the 3rd, when we had the first reading.
The 19th.
Or was it the 19th of February? I mean, November, rather.
All 3 pages are on December 3rd as well. So it just looks like it's for
Yeah,
today's.
if you look at your agenda on 1119, it's all there.
Yep.
All right, do we have to amend it, or?
No,
we're good?
No, it just,
Okay,
when she
it's
scanned
just
it in,
missing.
it missed the back of a page probably.
All right, so there's a motion to approve ordinance 1183 and a second. So this is a roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schubsta?
Aye.
Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Dufrain?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? There are 6 ayes. We also have ordinance 1184, an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year 2019 for the Borough of Emmaus at the rate of 6.7615 mils pursuant to Section 1310 of the Borough Code of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and a revenue-neutral levy based on the 2013 Lehigh County tax reassessment, split between a general fund tax of 5.6654 mils and a fire fund tax of 1.0961 mils. And like I said, this is our second reading. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve ordinance 1184? Councilman Dufresne, second by Councilman Schubsta. Questions or discussion? It's a roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schubsta?
Aye.
Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? Aye. There are 6 ayes. Under new business, we have ordinance 1185, an ordinance of the Borough of Emmaus, Lehigh County, Pennsylvania, requiring testing, inspection, repair, and replacement of building sewers and sewer laterals and providing for remedies and penalties for non-compliance. This is our first reading. We'll ask for a motion, or a motion and a second first, and then we'll discuss what the actual. Councilman Anders, seconded by Councilman Dufresne. You want to give an overview of this, Shane?
So the General Administration Committee has been working on this ordinance probably for 5 months, at least.
At least.
The better part of the second half of this year. This ordinance is a direct result of the requirements from the EPA administrative order. One of the things that both EPA, LCA, City of Allentown, and everyone else is saying is a large portion of the stormwater that is hitting our sewer lines and making it to the plant is coming from the sewer laterals. And so, in looking at how to address that without, going and really hitting every single house in the borough all at one time, Mr. Barrett, we'll throw him under the bus since he's no longer here, gave us some pretty good statistics as far as, how often homes turn over for sales. And so, how could we do something in terms of how often or when to do a lateral inspection, which would include people cameraing the sewer lateral for the house and the house sewer. And what the committee worked on was something that's pretty consistent across the board, across Pennsylvania, and that is doing the inspections upon the sale of a house. So that's how the ordinance was designed and written, and so it could actually be part of, sale agreement for people if that's how they choose to do it. However, knowing that, when the property is sold, the sewer lateral is inspected and looking the way that it's supposed to, and that stormwater is not infiltrating those our sewer lines. So that was the purpose behind it. That's how they designed it. They felt that that would be probably the best way to try to attack this across the board. And we spent a long time working on this thing to try to address this mandate, other than knocking on every house and telling everybody in the borough all at one time you have to get an inspection of your sewer lateral. I mean, that was kind of the other choice that we've been given, and it's not something that, you know, we were begging to do. It's something that we're being told needs to be done. And that goes along with all this stormwater mandate stuff that keeps getting jammed down our throat.
Thank you. That's good. All right, any questions? Councilman
Quick
Dufresne?
to add to what Shane said, so this is for the long-term betterment of our residents, because it will save future costs when we fix our problems. And also the homeowner, the new homeowner will have a benefit of knowing what the issues are, if any. So besides us having to do it essentially, there is a benefit.
Yeah,
Well, absolutely. No, and you're absolutely right, Mr. Dufresne. The committee spent a long time talking about, you know, the fact that when you go and buy a house, a lot of times that sewer line is what you don't know.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of tree roots, there's a lot of damage, there's a lot of clogs. This will be able to give a new property owner a fresh, at least,
fresh is probably not a
yeah,
good word
that's
for a
probably-
sewer line.
Yeah, that's why I kind of stopped there. But at least give them the opportunity to know that sewer line has been examined and should be working appropriately.
And Councilman Dufresne mentioned cost savings. The cost savings come when the groundwater or the rainwater that infiltrates the sewer lines, you're paying the city of Allentown for processing just rainwater, basically. So by keeping that out, we're saving costs.
And we know there's still a problem. These major rainstorms that have been occurring throughout the late summer and fall have really increased our sewer flow. So we know that the stormwater is still getting in. I mean, we've done a lot of work across this town, spent millions of dollars, but we know that the issues are still there. And you know, we're working through other ways, you know, through the manholes and fixing the sewer lines. But, you know, when we're told that, you know, over half of that rainwater that's hitting is most likely coming from laterals, you know, they're telling us that's where we need to concentrate efforts.
My only question is once if this passes, at what point do the homeowner or realtors, people selling, how does that information get given to them?
So that's a good question. We'll do a release in the spring newsletter. One of the things that we did was we put a delayed effective date in the ordinance, right? So that we can start educating people. We'll also put a notice out to the Realtors Association so that the local realtors know. It's important that they know.
Exactly.
Because they're the ones that are selling most of these houses. And we'll obviously put the literature on the website and things like that. And these guys, I'm sure, will make beautiful front page articles on this at some point.
Front page.
So,
Yeah, the effective date is 90 days, so figure probably another 30 days to enact, maybe, you know, thereabouts. So you're probably in April or early May by the time this takes effect.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Anybody else questions? This is a roll call vote. Councilwoman McManaman?
Aye.
Councilman Schuster?
Aye.
Councilman Anders?
Aye.
Councilwoman Baumgartner?
Aye.
Councilman Dufresne?
Aye.
Councilman Ladenburg? Aye. There are 6 ayes. We'll have second reading probably the second meeting in January?
no, you know what? It might be the first meeting in January because we meet on the 7th. So
Okay,
I think there's an extra week in between meetings.
okay. So we'll have second reading in the first meeting in January. Unfinished business part 2, we have nothing. Items not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything to bring forward? Hearing none, mayor's report.
Thank you. On your iPads is my list of activities for the last quarter, along with my end-of-the-year report. I'd also like to publicly thank Terry Held for the beautifully decorated Christmas tree that he donated to the police department. He put it in the vestibule, so if you're out and about sometime this week, stop in and look at it. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Nice.
If there's no questions on my activities, I'll report progress.
And thank you for that, the update on what you do. You are very active in the community.
Yeah.
Always have been, but now we see what you do.
Thank you.
We didn't see it before.
All right, committee reports. We have Public Works Committee Chairman Anders.
We had the RFP for the lawn mowing and trimming services.
Right.
And Shane, did you want to?
Yeah, so, I mean, you guys had already approved going out, do RFPs for every one of our professional services, and the lawn mowing was up for this year. The reason that we're putting the lawn mowing in front of you to approve that RFP is because there are two changes in there that we wanted to make you aware of. And so in talking to the borough solicitor, we felt that council should approve the RFP because what those changes are. And what they are is eliminating a bid bond and eliminating a performance bond for lawn mowing. And the feeling was, we've only ever had one person bidding on that all the time. And why is that? Well, it's a lawn mowing service. These aren't multi-million-dollar companies for the most part. So making them get a bid bond on a $50,000 contract and then getting a performance bond, most of these guys don't even know what that is. In reality, they're mowing our grass. That doesn't mean that they don't have to carry insurance, okay? But at the end of the day, if they decide to stop mowing, our out is we just hire someone else and mow in the meantime. But do we really need a performance bond and a bid bond? And so in talking with Solicitor Dimick, we both felt that that's probably prohibiting some people from bidding on this. And how do we know if we have a fair contract price if it's the same person bidding for 2 decades? And literally, like, he's had it for the better part of 15 years. At least I know he's been here the seven years I've been here, and I think he had it much longer than that. And he does a good job. Don't get me wrong. It's not that we want to get rid of him. But when you're talking about $52,000 a year, it'd be nice to see if somebody else is able to bid on that thing and see if you actually have fair pricing. So we felt that we need to put that in front of you to have you decide whether or not you want to waive the bid bond, performance bond for lawn mowing, or if that's something that you really want in there, we'll go back to the drawing board.
So if we keep it as is, we don't need to do anything.
Well, as it is right now, the way that it reads here, we would ask you to approve that RFP as it's written.
Okay, wasn't one of the other things that there was options in there about different
Yeah.
locations?
So one of the things that we did, because there's been a lot of discussion and we really couldn't finalize anything at our last committee meeting,
Nice way.
but one of the things that we did was we designed this so that we are having them itemize the entire contract. So if at any point we decide we don't want the contractor to do a property anymore, we would need to tell them by January 1st that they won't be mowing this property this year. So, for example, if we decide that we're going to take over mowing 4th Street baseball fields, and we don't need a contractor to do that, they would deduct the 4th Street baseball fields from the contract, and we would take that piece over. Or for that matter, if there was a piece of property that we just aren't going to deal with at all, then they would deduct that. But we would have to tell them at the beginning of the year prior to the mowing season.
Okay.
So the RFP has it itemized out a little bit differently than it used to.
Do you want to place it in a form of a motion?
Yes, sir, I will place that in the form.
Motion by Councilman Anders, there's a second. Councilman Schipsta? Any more questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
And with that, I will report progress. Next meeting is to be determined.
Thank you. Health, Sanitation, and Codes Committee, Chairman Schipsta.
Yes, nothing for official action. It says on the iPads, the next meeting is to be determined. We have it scheduled for December 26th if we need to have that once we hear back, correct?
Right, so that's publicly advertised.
Yep.
That will all depend on
What's going on?
the court decision. If we need to have a meeting, we'll have the meeting.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's a day after
Otherwise, we'll
Christmas.
cancel it. Yep. Yep, hopefully we hear. Yep, I report progress.
My feeling is
Thank you.
the longer the delay, maybe the better the news.
Well, we'll go with that logic.
We're gonna go with that logic.
Parks and Recreation Committee, Chairwoman Baumgartner.
It helps me sleep at night, Brett.
Okay.
Our December meeting didn't take place, so I'll report progress. Our next meeting's still to be determined
Thank
for
you.
January.
Public Safety Committee, Chairman Dufresne.
Okay, we have a couple of items here. The first one is the Emergency Medical Services Agreement. Shane just received this on Friday, so we shouldn't take any action on this. At this point, he needs to talk to our legal team and stuff. Shane, you wanna add anything to that?
So this is an agreement that we've actually been asking for probably, well, again, 5, 6, 7 years with the Turnpike Commission. And what goes on is if there is an accident on the Turnpike anywhere near Emmaus, actually between Allentown and as far down as Quakertown, the Emmaus Fire Department's called to that accident. But yet, if there's an accident right on the Turnpike above the Emmaus Community Pool, Quakertown Ambulance is the responding agency to that accident. And so obviously we've been trying to get the Turnpike Commission to, if you're calling our fire department, why aren't you calling our ambulance, who's in the same building at the same time? And so it's finally made its way through the levels of bureaucracy. The last time we asked them was 2 years ago. We now have it at a point where they sent us a proposed agreement. Kind of took me by surprise when we got it. But I think our borough solicitor needs to review it. It's definitely something that we should be doing. There's no reason why the ambulance should come from Quakertown to, an accident scene, right outside of town here, that we go through the emergency gate and we're there. Now, what they do though as consideration, financial consideration, is they pay us $1,000 a year plus a certain amount of money per call. And I think it was maybe $100 per call or something like that. It's in the agreement, and $100 per call might be wrong, it might be 10. I'm not sure. It's $100 a call. And you still are able to bill the insurance companies and the patient. I mean, nothing there changes. It's just that they're basically contracting us to do that service. And so that means that they'll have to try to change their agreements with Quakertown and have the Quakertown ambulance in a more appropriate area where they normally would cover. I mean, there's 4 different ambulance companies between Quakertown and here. I mean, Quakertown's been, having to cover all of it. So it's a smart move by them. It's a good thing for us. It's going to result in faster response times, I believe. But it's a legal agreement. So I think legal counsel before we can.
So we'll address it in January sometime?
Yeah, I think so.
So that'll stay with the solicitor and Shane for now, and then it'll go back to public safety before we bring it forward.
Okay.
The next item on the list is the hiring consortium. This has been discussed in multiple committee meetings. You can see the notes in the committee notes here. Shane, you want to just give a little bit of guidance on this?
Yeah, so again, during budget discussions, council was aware of this. We spoke about this in detail. Essentially what this is doing is to try to expand the pool of candidates for the entire region for police hiring. Every municipality is facing the same challenge, and that is, in a job where Mrs. Gilbert, we used to have 60, 70 candidates for
For one
a
position.
police officer position, and now I think our last round was 13. And by the time we got done with polygraphs, we were down to 2. So you don't have a whole lot the pool just keeps going down and down and down and down. So what this does is every municipality outside the city that joins it, the consortium will do the first part of the hiring process. So they will do the written exam, which is consistent among everyone. They will do the physical fitness exam, which, again, we all use the same company. But the idea is that a candidate would test for all the Lehigh Valley or the Lehigh County departments at the same time. They would check off like what departments they'd be interested in. If we don't have a hiring, if we don't have an opening at that time, then we don't have an opening at that time. But the idea is that they'll give a test once a year. We're required to have a list that expires once a year, so it makes sense that we'd be doing this every year. We would still do the back end. We would do the oral boards. We would do all the background stuff, all that kind of stuff. We would still be doing ourselves, but it would definitely expand the pool of people applying. The cool thing about the consortium is one of the rules will be if you take a job, let's say that you decide, Fountain Hill was on your list and you take that job, and now Emmaus all of a sudden is hiring right behind it, you can't jump ship. You have to wait an entire year before you'd be eligible for anybody else that was in the consortium. So it protects some of the smaller departments, but it also allows you to not have to worry about, they took my job and now South Whitehall comes in and is hiring and they decide, and I'm taking the South Whitehall job now and I'm leaving Emmaus, or vice versa. I think it's all good for us. Berks County, Berks or Bucks? Berks?
Berks.
Berks County has one, and it's very successful for them. It's greatly expanded their pool, and there's some other counties across the state that do it. So I think that this is something that's a long time coming. There are probably some details we're going to have to work out, but we need a vote from council as to whether or not we want to move forward with it.
You want to place that in the form
Yeah,
of a
so
motion?
I'll place in the form of a motion for Emmaus to join the police department hiring consortium.
All right, is this a second? Councilman Anders? Any more questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. There are 6 ayes.
You can see the committee meeting notes there, so unless anybody has any questions, the next meeting for this committee is to be determined. Progress.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I could give you one from the 1953 box. There's one in there. All right, General Administration Committee is myself. We addressed the ordinance 1185. Wesley Barrett process, replacement process. It's actually in your committee meeting notes. Let me get to it. So there was an ad in the newspaper in the December 12th edition and Facebook and website posts. And then the letters of intent need to be to the borough by December 20th. And then we have a special council meeting on January 2nd. At the committee level, the GA meeting, we were discussing that if the same people apply, do we really need to interview them again, or are there people that we prefer, that we know that we don't want as a candidate already? Do we want to narrow the field before we actually interview? And kind of the idea we were thinking is we have a GA meeting on Thursday, which is the 20th, or is it the 9th? So that's the deadline of the applicants. So my opinion was, if we get 20, we need to narrow it down, but it may be a moot point if only 4 people apply. So it's basically a wait and see type of thing. See how many people apply. If it's 10 or more, maybe we want to narrow that down. But if it's only 5, then we'll just interview all 5. Is everyone else all right with that?
Who's going to narrow it down? Just the committee? Or do you want to have a?
Well, good point.
Yeah, and the problem, so first of all, just we may not have to worry about that. We have 1 so far.
Yeah, I don't think it's
So
gonna
we
be-
may not even have to worry about having that discussion unless a lot happens between now and Thursday morning at 9 a.m. The one better be a ringer because that's who you're getting. But because of the holiday, I mean that was really the biggest thing about this whole problem with Wes resigning, at the beginning of December, is the holiday kind of screws up any chance of us having other meetings. If you guys are going to narrow it down as an entire council, then what we need to do is we actually need to advertise for another special meeting prior to the 2nd. Because you guys can't meet and debate
Oh, I see.
as a full council and do that. So,
I mean, can we send an email out that morning saying these are the applicants?
yeah, I think at Gen Ed, you'll be able to say, well, we gave them a 9:00 a.m. deadline.
Yeah, that's
So
when
we'll
our
know,
meetings-
we'll know on the 20th,
Okay.
how many candidates. And like I said, unless there's a big influx in the next 2.5 days,
Could be lost in the mail, it's busy.
yeah, it could be. I don't think you're gonna be dealing with the numbers that we saw last time.
So, is everyone okay with that? I think it's just going to be a handful of people anyhow, so. All right.
Shane, will we be appointing them that night? we have the special meeting, we have to.
So the mayor has promised she will be here. If
Okay.
she's not here, then we have a problem. But if the mayor's here that night, we advertised a public meeting for you guys to vote. So the idea behind it is that they will be appointed that night and sworn in that night, and they will have an email address and an iPad in their hand by the next day, because they have a council meeting on the 7th that they're gonna have to prepare for. So that's, our whole thing is this is an election year, so the changeover again is coming next year. We can't afford to lose a month of time of not having committee meetings and not, like, we need to keep doing business here. You lose that whole month every election, like every January after an election year. You can't do that again this year. So, the whole idea is get them in, get them going, business as usual, we need to keep moving.
They'll have your prep classes, right?
Sure, they will have the orientation.
Awesome.
But we don't have the time to sit around and wait. And the 2nd of January is the exact 30-day deadline. So you have until 11:59 that night, otherwise it gets turned over to the vacancy officer, the next morning.
You ready?
All right.
All right, so unless anyone has any questions on the meeting minutes, I'll report progress. Our next meeting is tentatively January 3rd. I'm sorry, we have one this Thursday, but next year, January 3rd would be the first meeting. All right, Budget and Finance Committee, Councilman Dufresne's gonna act as the chairman.
All right, we already did ordinance 1184 earlier. The next one here is the fee schedule here, so I will make a motion to approve resolution 2018-45, the 2019 fee schedule.
There's a motion by Councilman Dufresne, second. Councilman Shripsta, any questions on the fee schedule? All right,
Everything was in there that you. talked
Yeah,
about.
everything, you guys were aware of everything.
Yeah, even the changes that were,
Correct.
yeah, I saw those in there.
all right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
All right, next on our list is the refuse collection and compost site assessment fees. So, just so we're aware in here, the new rate is $360. The old rate per unit was $288, so it's a $72 increase. The senior discount, which we're gonna do a better job of advertising and letting people know it's available, depending on your income, so not just by being a senior citizen, but depending on your income, is $180 or a 50% discount. So I make a motion to approve resolution 2018-46, the refuse collection and compost site assessment fees.
There's a motion by Councilman Dufresne, second. Councilwoman McManaman. Under discussion, I just want to point out also, we still will have the discounted rate. If you pay early, you'll still receive the $10 discount. And for senior citizens, if the senior citizens pay early, they won't pay $180. They'll get a $5 discount. They'll pay $175. So with that being said, any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. 6 ayes.
All right, next on our list is the resolution 2018-47, the adoption of the 2019 fiscal year budget. I'll place that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Councilman Dufresne, second. Councilman Shripsta. Questions or discussion on the budget?
I think we've talked enough about it.
Beat it to death.
We beat it up pretty good, we 6 years of doing this, that was a rough one this year. So.
It was. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
All right, next on the list is make a motion to pass resolution 2018-49, a December 17th, 2018 bill list.
There's a motion by Councilman Dufresne. Is there a second? Councilwoman Baumgartner. Questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
Next on the list is the Codemaster fee schedule. I'll make a motion to adopt the Codemaster 2019 services and fee schedule.
Motion by Councilman Dufresne, second. Councilman Schubsta? Questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. There are 6 ayes.
Okay, you can see the notes there, and our next meeting is scheduled for January 7th, 2019 at 6:45 PM in council chambers. Progress.
Thank you. Community Relations Planning and Development Committee Chairwoman McManaman.
Nothing for official action. Our next meeting is this Thursday, December 20th, 4:30. We report progress.
Thank you. You have various board and commission meeting minutes to keep you updated. Personal appeals, part 2. Anybody have an appeal? Please sign in and state your name, and you have 5 minutes for your appeal.
Yeah, Griffin Harold, 123 Elm Street. I didn't have an appeal, and then I heard the reading about the ordinance for the lateral line inspection.
Yes.
So LCA is saying, so we're doing manhole rehabilitation. They're also saying that your lateral sewer line could also be seeping stormwater, and that's
Correct.
contributing to the outflow, okay. So when I bought my house, I did have a sewer inspection, but, so they put the scope down and they could see if it was either, collapsed or if there was roots or something like that. Now, that was why I wanted it done, because I was concerned. So it turned out it was fine. So would they run that same sort of inspection?
Only when the house is sold.
Right. How does that does that inspection though determine whether water is getting in? I just thought that the inspection just sees if it's either blocked or there's roots or whatever. I don't know that, can an inspection tell that there's maybe like hairline cracks or that water is actually getting in?
Yeah, so those
is that a different
cameras, yeah,
inspection?
those cameras are high-tech.
Yeah,
They can tell by, if it's cracked, water's getting in. If there's roots, the water's getting in. The water's going right down through the root system of the trees. It will also look for clogs. I mean, that's also part of it.
Right.
But the design of it is going to be really to try to address the stormwater issues. But it'll find other things. It'll find collapses. It'll find that, I mean, we've found collapses where your sewer's never even making it to our main because it's draining somewhere out in your yard.
Sure.
I
Right.
mean, there's more to the problems than what you might think. I mean, our sewer system, to be honest, it was built in the 1950s, right? And so many of our houses were built around that same time. So you can imagine what a lot of laterals look like. They're made out of clay, and you've planted trees or bushes, or we've planted tree. I mean, there's gonna be issues. We know there are issues.
Earthquakes.
Yeah, earthquakes.
Yeah, I know. I think when I had mine done, when he ran, he's like, okay, it looks good, everything's fine, but I don't know that he went into, maybe that's the next level is to look and see if there was cracks. There might have been some cracks here and there, but the line, water was going through, right? It was.
So he'd be able to tell. He'd be able to tell with the camera. If you put a camera through there, because your lateral, so your lateral is not this big pipe. Your lateral is usually
Yep.
something like this. So the camera's barely going through it as it's going through. So they'd be able to see with that camera if there's cracks in it.
So, and how much are those inspections typically?
Well, so you can contract it out yourself, or you can contract the borough to do it. So the citizen's going to have their choice. If you had the borough to do it, we just passed the fee schedule to cover our cost. I mean, that's exactly what it was,
225?
225, 240.
225 or 240, it's one of those. We
Okay,
talked
well,
about all the numbers.
I won't split hairs over.
Okay, we
15
talked
bucks.
about both of those numbers, I can't.
But we actually had our public works director and our sewer guy in the room with us to go over what the costs were of them doing it. And then the market, if you pay in the fair market, what were they saying? It was somewhere between the 200 and 450 range,
Slightly
somewhere in
higher,
there.
Slightly higher
Yeah.
than what we said.
Yeah, I can't remember what I paid. It was something like that. So, now okay, so you get it inspected and, okay, if it passes, wonderful, but what if it fails?
Then you're going to need to have it repaired. Now, one of the advantages of it with the sale agreement,
225.
225?
Yeah.
With the sale agreement, you can work that out with the buyer, if you're the seller, one way or the other. But the whole idea is you're contributing to the stormwater issue. So you're gonna need to have that repaired. Or you have a collapse and the sewer that's supposed to be hitting the line is actually hitting the environment instead. So you will have to have that fixed, and the ordinance addresses that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my concern, is just a situation like mine where they put the scope down, the line looks fine. However, there could be hairline cracks, water could be getting in, but it passes, it goes out. I'm worried that I would have to get my line replaced. Now, that's not hundreds of dollars, that's thousands of dollars,
Absolutely.
right? That's a big bill.
Sure.
And
If you
I'm
just have
worried
a-
that, I'm worried that I heard a lot of good stuff being discussed about doing this, but there is some drawbacks. And these are just off the top of my head, I hadn't heard this before, so
Well, and that's one of the
I'm
reasons
sure if I
why,
sat down, I would think of some others, but,
that's one of the reasons why we spent 6 months debating how we're gonna handle this. We looked at those drawbacks, we looked at those problems, and we also looked at what we're forced to do by federal law. And at the end of the day, that's the reason why we have it in front of us, is because we have a federal mandate telling us we have to deal with this. And when they're saying that over 50% of our problem is probably coming from the laterals, we have to look at the laterals. Now, when you do your lateral inspection, at the end of that lateral is where it hooks into the borough. Sometimes there's problems on that end, and the borough's going to have to deal with that end, and make repairs at the T. So it's not just the citizens that are gonna have to deal with an individual repair, but the borough's probably gonna have to be dealing with some repairs at the T, where it connects as well.
yeah, I know. Yeah, like you said, it's an old system, but I don't know that it necessarily means that we need to. I think it's a fix as fail. When it cracks or it breaks and no water gets through, then I gotta do something right. But if there's fractures in the pipe, hairline cracks, which is normal for something that's 60 years old, I would say just leave it. And yeah, I know it's possible. And again, how do they truly know? Are they doing some analysis on the lines to say it's contributing X amount? I know I could see the manhole covers, and I'm sure water is getting in through these laterals. How much? I mean, that's very subjective, I think. I'd love to see some analysis that says.
Well, so just
how
to
they
be
came
clear,
up
our
with it.
ordinance already says that it has to be free of cracks anyway. What we're doing is we're trying to relieve that a little bit and making it that it's when you sell the house. It's really what the goal of this was. We have to deal with this. This isn't something we want to do. This is something that they're telling us we have to do.
And so that's my last comment. Okay. So, in general, I think that some of this stormwater stuff is kind of getting out of hand. I mean,
Oh, yeah, tell us
we
about
know.
it.
So I would love to know, and I think the citizens would love to know, who do I need to call at the state level or even the federal level
It's
to
both.
complain?
Yeah, It's both
so-
levels.
So we're
Right,
on
I
them
mean-
all the time, but it's at both levels. So what's
I-
happened, Mr. Harold, is EPA put this mandate down years ago.
Right.
And if the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania would have done their job years ago, we wouldn't have it shoved down our throat all of a sudden. The state of Maryland has done a fantastic job addressing their stormwater issues, both on the because this isn't the only stormwater problem. Now they're telling us, so now we're gonna separate the stormwater going into the sewers.
Yeah.
We're gonna take it and put it into the creeks. Well, the federal government also passed a mandate that said we have to clean up the water going to the creeks. So it's, you're getting it on the front end and on the back. What the federal government has said to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is if you would have done this 20 years ago when you were supposed to, then we won't be really shoving it down your throats now. So EPA has passed it on to DEP. DEP has said, okay, we're finally bowing down and we're shoving it down the throats of the municipalities and the local sewer plants. So yeah, it's state representatives, it's state senators, but it works its way all the way up to the federal level, because that's really where the mandate starts. Now, when we had 4 inches of rain, the other debate is how much sewer hit the river.
Yeah, I know
mean,
that
is that
on high
really-
volume, it outflows.
Is that
That's-
really where raw sewage is supposed to go? So, the environmental side of it is, if we'd be doing our job, collectively, then that stuff wouldn't be hitting. Now, you're never going to separate 100% of stormwater. It's not gonna happen. We can try and try and try and try. It is impossible. But we can get a lot more off than what we have collectively. That's between all the municipalities.
Right. Well, one would hope that they've done some analysis that says if the individual homeowners need to,
Oh, there's been a lot of
that's gonna
analysis.
work. That,
Yeah.
it could be that maybe we just need to upgrade the capacity of the plant for large swells of storms, you know, maybe that's I don't know, but,
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they proposed that, and EPA said, no. You need to maintain your system. You need to fix your system and get the stormwater out of the system. The city of Allentown proposed up to a $200 million expansion to do exactly that. And EPA came back and said, you need to fix the water going in, because that's where the problem is.
right. Okay, well, I'd love to, if someone could, well, I guess I can look, but if anyone knows who I can call directly, because I think this whole situation, I get it. I understand where it's coming from. I understand why it's needed. I just think it needs to be tempered a little bit, because I think it's getting a little nuts. You know, the whole pollution reduction plan, you know, $700,000 to upgrade this, upgrade that, that's another cost we're all gonna have to bear. That's gonna be in everyone's water bill. Now we have this on top of it.
Well, and
And I
that's a
think-
drop in the bucket compared to what we've already spent on
Right.
the sewer and spending. I mean, we have $550,000 of projects in the bucket for next year with grant money, a lot of grant money, but to address the manholes, to address sewer meters, to address this infrastructure, and that's just in 1 year. I mean, we're spending over $100,000 every year trying to pick with this thing, and they're telling us we're way behind.
Well, I think, you know, the citizens maybe need to be more aware of, you know, if everyone's okay with it, I would, at some points, I would push back a little bit, and then, you know, I guess what happens if you don't do it? Do we get a fine? What if we just say,
That's covered
hey, we're
in
not
the
doing
ordinance,
it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's covered in the ordinance.
There's,
Yeah.
there has been a lot of pushback, and the pushback occurred in meeting after meeting with LCA, Lehigh County Authority, the city of Allentown, people with DEP, people with EPA there, and there was a lot of pushback by the municipalities. And what this ordinance is addressing is really a sewage problem. It's not a stormwater problem.
Right.
But you can get into a whole other area of just stormwater and what you do with stormwater, but this is a sewage problem, and the Allentown plant has been under a notice of violation for a number of years because they have overflows that go directly into the river, and everybody who contributes to that plant pretty much has no choice but to deal with it the best way you can. And that's where this is coming from. It's driven by the regulatory agencies. This is not being driven by the borough. Borough's being told what to do on this.
Right. No, that's what I thought, and I assume that. I just think that these guys, the politicians, maybe need to hear a little bit of feedback, because now the reality is setting in, and I think it's maybe a little bit more than what theoretically we need to do right at this second.
We have been
so.
fighting on the legal stage this whole matter for 6 years, Tom.
Yeah, quite a long time.
We would encourage you to do what you said, reach out to them, please, we have, so the more people that do, the better.
I mean, there's been public hearings for the public, but I mean, there's, you know, and if you do some morning call and WFMZ and even some of these Penn Press articles, research, they've been writing about this for a long time. And you'll see there's been wild articles about the fights and the battles and the issues that have been going on, and this is part of that whole mess.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other personal appeals? All right. Borough Manager's Report.
The significant revenue and expense items are in your iPads. I think that's all I have for you tonight. You have any questions for me?
No? Under President's Business, I'd just like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hope everyone's safe during the holiday, and enjoy your family and friends, because that's the most important thing in everyone's life. So, and also go Eagles.
I apologize, I did have one quick thing. The auction was
after that?
Saturday. Well, the
Oh,
auction was
yeah, the
Saturday.
auction.
So, and I know that a couple of you have asked me about the auction. We probably grossed between $40,000 and $50,000. Netting probably over 30 will be the net after all the expenses. You all know how much stuff was there. We emptied out all the trailers at the fire training grounds. We had all the old rodale stuff. We had junk vehicles, and I mean, like, junk vehicles, like we were jump starting them and blowing hydraulic lines as we were starting them, and people bought everything. Literally, they bought it out. They bought the toilets. They bought the old insulation inside the building. If there's junk, people will buy it, you know, and honest to goodness, they bought a fire helmet, they bought things they bought the old colander that they made to make hoagies 25 years ago.
Oh, my God. They still have that?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Is there lettuce in it?
So the boat went, everybody
The
was
boat,
asking
the
me
boat
about
sold for
the boat.
$3,500.
Wow.
So you couldn't.
You know, so, the grader went for over $10,000.
Lift truck?
The lift truck went for, I think, $2,500, somewhere in there.
How much, what was?
Was that Nate Brown that bought it?
Between 40 and 50 was the gross. We'll know in about 10 more days.
More than we.
But that building got cleaned out,
Great.
you know, and that's great news. The auctioneer worked very hard. I thought their staff did a great job. We had over 100 people at the auction. People just bid, like, we sold the old Chiefs blue pickup truck, like in 1992. The thing sold for like $2,000. You couldn't pay me to take it. The other old Chiefs vehicle, the old red Durango or whatever it was, that sold for $3,500. It sold for more than what the dump truck sold for. Of course, the dump truck, like, the frames rusted out and the hydraulic line blew when we tried to lift it, and yeah, everything could go wrong when you're trying to sell it. So, Ford Explorer that had no engine in it, or well, the engine's blown, but that sold for $550. So, and scrap wood went for dime, dollar, pennies on the dollar and things like that. But bottom line is, it all sold. There's very little to part ways with. Like somebody came in and bought all those old Rodale partitions.
Yeah, the cubicle.
The cubicles. They bought it all. They bought old door frames. They bought all that stuff. So it was wild just going in there and watching people cart what I thought was crap out of the building, and they were like proud little kids. They were thrilled to death that they bought it. So.
Done.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn. Councilman Dufresne, seconded by Councilman Anders. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Meeting adjourned at 7. Is it 7:58? 59. We'll go 59.